All right, Slice of Success, Sal Lupoli, Gary Tangwa here. Sal, I want to get into this right away because the topic of this podcast, this episode, is really like being your own person and carving your own path. And a lot of people talk about it. I want to be my own boss. I want to run, but they don't have the courage. They don't have the work ethic to do it. You know, first of all, I have to ask you, have you ever worked for anybody that is not a family member?
Besides my journey and maybe a little bit of landscaping when I was, 13 or 14 years old, right. I've never worked for anyone else but myself, Gary.
How come?
Well, because my journey was a little different, and I say that with great respect and humility. But when I was a young man, I thought I was going to fall in line like my three older brothers. My father was very, very sick much of his life. And so when my three older brothers would come home from work and they were all out of school, they would put their check on the refrigerator. I'll never forget it, under the magnet. And then my mother would take the check, she would cash the checks, and come Monday or Tuesday morning, you would have it that same place. You would get your check, and the check would be cash, and whatever was in there was your money. And she would take what she needed to support the family. Gary, I actually thought that was my path. That was what I was going to do. My three older brothers were in the union. I was going to go into the union, whatever it took. And so long story short, I became this really humbly talented football player. And one day, a college coach came to my house and offered me a full scholarship in front of my mother and father from the University of New Hampshire. And anyways, they offered me a full scholarship. That's when I knew my life was going to go in a different direction. Right. And so my father, who never went to college, he always thought it was important to go to work right away because he would call that your prime
your education.
Years, your education. Thank you very much. And so I said to him, I said, Dad, the college, they want me to go to play football for free. And that was just at the beginning. And he says, well, if they're going to pay for it, how do you give up an opportunity like that? And then here came all the other schools. And maybe I got, maybe 20 or 30 scholarship offers, full scholarships. And I decided to go to Northeastern University.
How come?
Because this is very simple. I needed to be close to my family. And I was from the city. And so going back to Huntington Avenue was like being in East Boston. Yeah. And to me, it was just like being home again. And I just really enjoyed it. That journey that brought me to Northeastern University and football was really the beginning of how I became an entrepreneur. It was because I got that bug at Northeastern University that I knew I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know how to do it.
What was that? Was there a moment? Was there a teacher? Was there a professor? Was there a lab? What was it?
The Italians, we fight for airtime at the dinner table. And I can remember as a young man listening in broken Italian, this is what I wanted to tell you. All I could ever remember were my aunts and my grandmother and my uncles, all in broken Italian saying, you want to be successful in this country? Buy property, buy property, buy property. And this is why the country is one of the greatest countries in the world, because it allows you to work really hard. And as a result of working hard, you're able to enjoy some of your successes. And they said, Salvi, no matter what happens, buy property. So Gary, I grew up like remembering that at nighttime, dreaming about it, buy property, buy property. And so when I went to Northeastern, and my father said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to buy property. And it wasn't until my junior year and as taking all these business classes that I said, you know what? I really want to buy property. And I had a conversation with my father, who was sick in the bed, by the way. I used to have a conversation with him for 2-3 hours at the edge of his bed. And I said, Dad, I want to buy property. And I remember he looked at me, Gary, and he said, Salvi, that's good. He says, but you need equity, and we have none of that. I said, so what do I do, Dad? Now, I graduated with honors from Northeastern University. I was blessed enough to go to MIT Sloan and get my master's there. And I learned more from my father and mother's lessons in life than I did with all of those people telling me what to do, because their life lessons were the core of my business.
Sure.
But it was my father who said to me, Sally, why don't you open up a business and you put the business in the real estate that you want to buy someday? Maybe the banks will look favorably because you'll be owner-occupied. That might be a good thing for you. Something as simple as that I thought was brilliant. So what did I do? I went to my professors at Northeastern University. I told them my idea, and they said, that's pretty sound advice.
Right.
What's the business? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? And he says, well, geez, why, you're here. Why don't you do your research? And my father said to me, he said, you have to create a business that it's not like you're a manufacturing plant that one building that's all you're going to need. You got to open something that could be multiple stores. This way, Sally, you could buy multiple buildings. I thought that was fascinating.
Wow.
And so I then said to him, Dad, you brought me this far. Get me to the finish line. Tell me what this is. He goes, I can't, Dad. Only you can figure out what it is. But
Do you think, I'm sorry to stop, but do you think your father had this dream as a young man and for whatever reason couldn't pull it off? Because it sounds like he just didn't come up with this on the spot.
no, he didn't have this dream for himself because he was very sick most of his life.
That was it, okay. He had it for you.
But kind of goes back to the original story. When I held my daughter in my hands and I looked at her and I said, God, thank you so much, but Mary, I promise I'm never going to stop working as hard as I possibly can for you. I'm going to give you all the greatest advice I can ever give. I'm going to put everything in my life is going to be dedicated to you. My father did the same thing and my mother did the same thing. And so all the stuff that they learned in their life, they were able to later on in life put it all together and say, this is maybe what you should do. So sometimes in life, it's not what you learn in the moment, it's the journey that you're on and the lessons you learned at the end of it, or at some point that you're able to say, Gary, if you could do it all again, this is what you should do. But it was my father who said, Salvi, the food business was good to your father because he worked in large-scale restaurants.
Right.
But those were the days when you had 400-seat restaurants.
Yeah.
Gary. He said, but maybe you'll look and you study. And so I became a student of the food industry, and then that led me to the fast food industry. And Gary, if you ask me a question, how Ray Kroc started McDonald's, of how he took the concept of McDonald's Brothers, or the Domino's story, or the Pizza Hut story, or you name the fast food, I'm going to be able to give you the background on it because I became a student at Northeastern of studying every mistake or success that they had. And it was when I fell upon Ray Kroc, I said, there it is. He doesn't sell burgers, he buys buildings. And that's when I fell in love with that whole journey. I fell in love with the way he did things, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I went back to my father, and I said, Dad, it's fast food. He says, okay. He's called me college boy. Okay, college boy.
Oh, yeah. My dad called me Joe College.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because he didn't go to college either, yeah.
Yeah. He said, okay, college boy, what are you going to do? What's the food business you're going to be in? I said, I don't know, Dad. What do you think? And he says, well, we went back and forth, and he said, while you were researching, what's the most profitable business? I said, full stop, pizza. I said, okay. Well, culturally it works for you, Salvi, and geez, we come from the foodie capital of the country, maybe, Boston, North End, et cetera, et cetera. He says, why don't you take a look at the pizza industry? Pizza's still a product today. Pizza's probably the highest food profit margin today. Still there. People might say it's ice cream or coffee or any of that nonsense, Gary. And you know what I say to them? Yeah, come to Maine in January and try to sell ice cream. Well, what about coffee? Yeah, I know. Go to Dunkin' Donuts at 5 o'clock at nighttime and tell me how much coffee they're selling. But pizza's a lunchtime, pizza's dinner time. Weekends. Parties. You can eat pizza 2-3 times a week and still feel good about it. When you look at whenever you make something, and maybe it's the burger business or the meat business, I mean, that's a commodity. That price is always up here when you're talking about beef. Fish, it's always going to be up here because of the turnover. You got to eat it, cook it very quickly. It has no shelf life on it. But pizza, flour, tomatoes, cheese, those are the 3 staffs of life. And you can find those 3 items anywhere on the planet. You can find tomato, cheese, and flour.
Right.
And so father picked up the phone. He called an old friend of his. Gentleman's name was Al Giorgio. I'll never forget him. He let me work in his pizzeria on 69 Salem Street that was called Giorgio's Pizza. I used to go from Northeastern University, take the Green Line all the way down after class, and I would work in the pizzeria till close. And I worked there 6-7 days a week. And then I never forget it. I called my father one day. I said, Dad, I can do this. And it was him who said, you better go work in a pizzeria to see if you can like looking at the same four walls.
Right.
And I said, Dad, what are you talking about? He said, Dad, listen to your father. I know what it is. I've seen those people that think they can do something. All of a sudden they realize they're never leaving those four walls 7 days a week, 15-hour days. They go crazy.
Right.
And after I did it for about 9 months, I said, Dad, I can do this, and I can do it very well. He says, okay.
Well, you had a goal, though, right, too?
So you know what my goal was? Motivation comes in all forms and shapes and
Oh,
sizes,
yeah.
right? Gary, when you come from humble beginnings and your father's one step away from passing away and he's very, very sick, and you have a mother that's working 80 hours a week and you have 5 brothers, my motivation was clear. I wanted to do something and I didn't care what it took, whatever I had to change my family's life. My mother and father and then my brothers. I was going to do whatever it took to change their lives. Whatever path I took, I was going to be a success because it was my mother and father and my family that was motivating me. It wasn't me being wealthy. I was a graduate on my way to a graduate of Northeastern University with a 3.0.
Hey, you could have taken a job. You could have
did
gone to
anything
work
like-
at a bank, a firm,
right.
whatever.
But you remember I told you the story about my mother and father that had to quit school
Yeah.
to take care of their family? It was the same thing that I'm describing.
Well, Sal, as I'm getting to know you here, it's no wonder that you're in the customer service business because that's what you do. Like you are the customer service person for your family.
It's interesting that you say that because I used to take my father to every doctor's appointment, my mother to every doctor's appointment. I used to take care of my brothers, my 2 younger brothers. I helped my older brothers when I could. I mean, they were much older than me, but
Making
whatever
other
I could.
people feel good makes you feel good.
That's right.
And that's
right.
the key
It's a
to
sense
your
of
success.
accomplishment. Whenever you could put somebody first and you put the team first instead of yourself, I promise you will be successful. Whenever you can put the team, now the team could be actually the team you play on. It could be your spouse, your children, your family. Whenever you can put them first, I promise you'll find success.
So you're in the pizza shop, you're in your place, you've got your own spot, okay? So then take us from after your first year of being your own man, of being your own business owner, what was it like?
So I'm going to answer that question, but I want to tell you something that not a lot of people know.
Okay.
When I decided it was going to be in the pizza business, and I wrote a business plan, my professors tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it.
Yeah.
They said, now you got to go do it. I was a senior at Northeastern University. I started looking for locations. 6 months before I graduated, I signed a lease up in Salem, New Hampshire. My father and mother, from the hospital, my father signed the papers for a 3rd mortgage on the house. I sold my car and I paid 17% interest rates to open the first Sal's Pizza.
17%?
17%. I rented 780 square feet. I poured every quarter I had into the location. 6 months after I graduated, I opened Sal's Pizza up in Salem, New Hampshire, and I sold 19-inch 3-pound pizzas for $4.99. And all I could think about was every day of where the second store was going to be that I was going to buy. Right. 9 months after I opened my first store, I purchased my first building in North Andover, Massachusetts, and I paid $225,000, which was all the money in the world to me. And I got the owner of the property, a beautiful older woman, little old lady. She took back paper on the property. I gave her everything I had. I emptied my bank account. It was like, $25,000. It was one of those $27,642 checks. I gave her everything. And over the next year, every dollar that I made in the pizzeria, I brought it to the contractor and he fixed a little bit more in the store. It took me a year.
So let's get into that a little bit. So that first year, okay, so you're running the pizzeria in New Hampshire. Are you taking a salary? How are you living? Is every dime going back into the business? What is your life like?
So let me tell you, and I'm always you're gonna hear this time and time again, Gary. You're gonna hear me say a lesson in life that I learned from my father and my mother. And so I'm gonna give you one of those lessons. My father said, Sal, you do realize what you're about to do. This is a labor of love and you're gonna work a lot of hours, but don't worry, you're gonna be wealthy. And I said to my father, Gary, I was 21 years old when I opened the pizzeria.
I know.
I was a puppy. I said, Dad, how do you know I'm going to be successful? He said, because you're going to work so hard, you're not going to be able to spend the money.
Right.
But the greatest thing that I ever did, the first real accomplishment, what I strove for, was the day I opened my first pizzeria. I went to my mother and I said to her, you'll never pay another bill as long as I live again. And I paid every gas bill, electric bill, utility bill, car bill, insurance bill. And that motivation of doing that and working so hard, Gary, I lived in the basement of my house where my mother and father still lived, in that home that
While
had
you
a
were
third
running the
mortgage.
business.
I used to get up every morning.
So you didn't go out, you weren't socializing, you weren't spending any dough, no pun intended, you were working.
15-hour days, 7 days a week, never spending a quarter. Whatever my parents didn't need for their home to survive and pay for my brothers and that home,
Right.
everything else went into the bank.
So I'm curious, how do you get rid of a mortgage at 17%? Like, just kind of take me through the how did you pull that off? With you, obviously you did the math, you knew you had to cover, but you can't carry that mortgage forever.
Yeah, so I'm always amazed when people that are starting out businesses, they go and they put a formula in front of me and they say, the labor cost is 33% or it's 38% or it's 30%, and I would say to them, let me ask you a question. Are you the only one? Yeah, I'm going to start the business from scratch. I go, so how do you come up with this labor cost? He goes, well, that's the cost. I said, you know what the labor cost for you is? Zero.
Right.
It's zero. You're free. You know what your job is? Your job is to work so hard and make sure there's money in the register at the end. After all your bills is paid, whatever's left, you spend it for what you need to, and the rest goes in the bank. And then you're going to wake up one day and you're going to say, where did all this money come from? And if you're smart and you invest it the right way by buying property like the way the vision that I was taught, then you'll wake up someday and say, oh my God, when did I end up with, and Gary, fast forward 36 years later, the Lupoli companies, we own 10 million square feet of real estate. We own 170 Sal's Pizzas that are out there, and so.
Are they franchised too?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What's the benefit for the franchisee or for you as opposed to owning them yourself?
So whenever you franchise, you can open multiple stores much faster than if you did it yourself, Gary.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
And so I encourage entrepreneurs to, maybe you start off, if you're in the food industry or any industry that you think you can franchise, of course you have to learn the ropes and do it yourself for the first couple of 3, 4, 5, I don't care how many you're going to open. But at some point, if you really want to grow, you have to open it up and trust people and rely upon and look for people that talk like you, that act like you, that appreciate things like you. Because if you find those people, those are the winners. Don't find somebody.
So you're picky.
I'm very picky. I'm very picky because I've learned along my journey of when I met somebody that said, I could be doing this from the beach in Florida. If I had 20 stores, I could just call up and check on the stores. When I heard that, I used to run the other way. I'm always concerned that what I've built and the people that I support.
What's your name?
Yes, and in the end, Gary, that's what our mother and father gave us.
Well, yeah. You can't have some guy running a crappy Sal's.
That's right.
I mean,
Gary, I'm gonna share something with you. And the day before he died, he said to me, "I'm not gonna live through this operation." And I said, "What are you talking about, Dad? The operation was 40 days ago. We beat this. You won. Like, we're gonna live a great life, Dad." He said, "No, Salvi." I said, "You can't leave me. Who's gonna give me the advice, Dad? You gotta hang around. You gotta fight through this, Dad." He said, "You don't need my advice anymore." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. When you come to the crossroads where you have to make a left or a right, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to say this: the next decision I make, will my mother and father be proud of the decision? And I promise you I'll always give you the answer." Till this day I do that. And when I was a young man and I listened to my father, that transition that you're talking about, that how do I find the person, it all goes back to, is this the kind of person I want next to me carrying my name, my brand? Then I would say no. Even though at that point, oh my God, they're going to give me a lot of money for this franchise.
Okay, say out of 10 people apply to be a franchisee, how many pass the test?
10%.
Really?
Yep, 10%.
1 out of 10 pass the test.
That's right. You have to inspire this family, and it's not because your last name's Lupoli. That's not the family I'm talking about. I'm talking about the 2,000 people that work in this organization. Like,
Right.
I'm their gatekeeper. Like this company, I'm on that wall watching out for those people, and I'm saying to myself, I'm gonna hire you. You're gonna mess up the name. Or
Right.
what happens if you open a store and you don't do the right thing by it, and somebody says, I'm not going to those stores anymore? What happens if I have an individual that's gonna get affected by that store closing? How do you know that store that's closing, the factory that makes all the dough, sausage, and cheese, how do you know I'm not gonna lay someone off if we close stores? So therefore, you think I'm gonna allow you to affect their lives? You think I'm going to allow you, Mr. Stranger, because you have money, to affect my kids that work in this organization? The answer is no, I'm not interested. I'll just work harder, Gary, and until I find the right person. Have I had my share of failures? Gary, have I bet on people that have failed? Yes.
Well, yeah.
Of course I have. But Gary, there's more successes than there are failures, and that's what I'm most proud of. You know, I have a phrase that I use. I am ferociously loyal to my company,
Right.
my family, and my employees. I'm ferociously loyal. I will fight you and fight you and fight you. And I'm not talking physical. I'm just talking about with my passion.
Yeah.
I will fight you till the end, because I will fight to convince you that the way we're doing things is the way things should be. That's why you have to be ferociously loyal to what's right, Gary. And you have to keep fighting. It's hard to be strong. It's easy to be weak. It's easy for these parents, and I apologize, I don't want to
Well,
get
no,
off.
because the problem is the parents think that their kids' success is a reflection on them. That's why they don't want their kids to fail, because it thinks it makes them look like a bad parent, when it's just the opposite.
I won't argue with your philosophy. I won't argue with your opinion. But what I will say is, I will get that individual in the organization, and I will spend time and energy, especially in the old days when I made pizzas myself and I was around these young kids all the time. I would say, sit down, and I would educate them for 15, 20 minutes, an hour a day, saying, do you understand the way you're talking, why it's wrong for these reasons? Or they would say to me, oh my God, Sal, look at that great car you have. Look at that beautiful home you bought for your mother and father. Someday I want to do that. Well, let's talk about how you get there.
How you do it, yeah, because you're mentoring them. Yeah, that's important.
You just didn't wake up one day and there was the house.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about this journey that you have to be on.
Well, that's another thing, Sal, is like, how do your kids have a better life than you? The image that America has portrayed is that the next generation has to do better than the previous one. And we're getting to a point where that's almost impossible. And that generation needs to know that's okay. Like, your son and daughter have to know that they're valuable if they just continue to do what you do. They don't have to do better than you.
I just want them to be good. I want them to be good fathers and good mothers. I want them to be good brothers and sisters. I want them to be good people, good humans, good for their community. And I promise you, if you can do that, you'll live the best life you've ever had.
No question. That's a great way to end this one. That is absolutely perfect. Sal, until next time. And next time, we're going to go to the gridiron, folks. So don't miss that. A little slice of football right here.